We already had a little bit of a discussion beforehand, or actually nice conversation, and let's jump back into it after you give a little bit of an intro to the crowd.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a nice honor to be on the podcast. I listened to the first few episodes, really enjoyed those. So I recommend that to a few people as well. Yeah, short introduction. So my name is Tim, Energia, as people might know, and I am a jiu-jitsu instructor. I'm based in the Netherlands, specifically to the east of the Netherlands. For people out there, the Netherlands is a bit more than Amsterdam, but to the east, close to the German border. And I used to be a elementary teacher. I studied to be a professor for kids. I don't know what's called in English, but I think it's like sixth grade, so the final grades of the kids before they go to high school. And after a while, I thought I wanted to make a living out of my hobby, which was teaching. And by then, it was teaching capoeira. So I started out with capoeira around 12 to 13 years ago. And from there, I picked on submission grappling, which is actually a funny story, but we'll get to that later maybe. And nowadays, I travel, teach. I teach in 4 different cities: jiu-jitsu, grappling, MMA, mainly focus on groundwork, and still capoeira. And yeah, so
Oh
that's a little bit
wow,
about me.
you're teaching at 4 different cities, um, like at the same time. Like you're constantly on the road, or how does it work?
Yeah, not actually by choice so much as, the thing is, the cities I live in aren't that big. So if you teach, for example, in Amsterdam, you can have a lot of students, you can focus money there. And I started out to spreading out in between cities. And I got calls, I got asked to teach at different places. And being young and traveling, and as a student, I thought, yeah, sure, let's just do it, pick it up, and a lot of passion for the sports. And I had a few students here, a few students there. Now everything got a bit out of hand. So we have about 130 students in a few cities. And the traveling is kind of killing, but I do like to switch between places, switch between people. And also, as a business owner, I thought it was a pretty smart move to spread my chances and odds between cities. So, for example, if one of the dojos goes bankrupt or something happens, or the owner of the gym where I rent or where I'm hired gets into trouble, I'm not losing the entire business. So I'm kind of spreading my chances. And besides that, for example, here in the Netherlands, we have like competitive people who do a lot of jiu-jitsu, like on a daily basis. But most people are just recreational. They want to train twice or 3 times a week. So if you teach at a gym and you offer classes 7 days a week or twice a day, you will just have the same people and you have to spend a lot of time. And there's also a limit on what you can make as a business owner. So if you teach at different cities, you can cater to different people, therefore spreading your hours across different dojos and attending to more people, which leads to more students, which is better for business. So there's a few reasons why I did it. I didn't really choose to do the traveling between all the cities. It just happened. But nowadays I pretty enjoy it. Besides the traveling, which
But
sucks.
that's really amazing what you're saying, and you're right now a brown belt, right? For I think 7 months, and you've already been
Correctly.
teaching since purple belt, right? And
Yes, correct. Yeah.
how did you start as a teacher? I mean, you have this educational background, which is definitely a plus, right? But if you're teaching
Yeah.
martial arts to persons, like especially then in 4 different cities, what's your red line? Like, what do you teach? Like, what's your, I don't know, jujitsu 101?
Okay, good question. So the first part of your question, how did it happen? So yeah, as you said, I was studying to be an elementary teacher, and it started out with capoeira, doing a lot of workshops and taking over classes when my professor was ill or traveling. And I got a call one day from my capoeira master who said, "Hey, we have an instructor who's quitting, and he has students, and we need someone to take over." And mind you, the city I was supposed to take over classes was over a 2 hour drive. So that's 2 hour drive to go there, teach one class, and 2 hour drive back. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it," because for me it was a huge opportunity and a nice a dream to teach. And I didn't even care that I was losing money on it because the travel expenses were more than the students were paying. But I was like, yeah, it's my dream to teach, so let's get this chance. So I did it for 5 years and traveling to one city, 2 hours, 2 hours back every week. Besides studying on my university. And that went pretty well. I opened another location to teach capoeira for adults and kids. And then one day I got a question. I was doing jiu-jitsu and I got a question from a gym. They asked, "Hey, do you want to teach a grappling class here for beginners?" And I thought, yeah, that's cool. I was honored. But I first called my professor from jiu-jitsu and asked him, "Hey, what do you think? Because I don't want to do anything without your permission." And he said it was a great idea. He said, "Sure, you can start out, just do some no-gi grappling for beginners. Good jiu-jitsu, but especially because I was already a teacher." He said, being amazing black belt doesn't make you a good teacher, but being a teacher makes you a teacher. So I started out, and it started out with only 4 students with grappling. And from there on, it expanded and it went into jiu-jitsu with the gi. I got called for another city, and that's how I started up ending in different cities. And the word spread, and yeah, I never quit. And so that has a funny story. And I think the teaching background obviously is a huge factor in why my professors allowed me to teach at a very young, well, not necessarily age, but jiu-jitsu age, as to say. And the second part of your question, could you please remind me?
So how does your jiu-jitsu
Oh, sorry, the
101
jiu-jitsu
exactly?
101.
Yeah.
Yeah, the jiu-jitsu 101. Um, yeah. Stop me when I'm talking too much, right? So the jiu-jitsu 101, what I think philosophy-wise on teaching is, for example, yesterday we had a few blue belts visiting. I'm visiting my gym. I had like 30 students on the mat. We had a jiu-jitsu class. And after class, they stayed. They really enjoyed the class. And they said, what's really new to us is watching a class where there's a lot of questions asked. So I spoke about this on another podcast on the inquiry-based learning and how I want people to be uh, actively watching. So in Jiu-Jitsu, we use an old system a lot of the time. We use what I call just like an instructional system. Like, okay, guys, we're going to do this technique, A, B, C, watch, repeat, and do after me, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not bashing or ranting on anything, but it's a bit outdated and it's just one tool. And if you only use this one specific tool, then you're just doing an instruction. And I like to make a reference to, for example, a IKEA manual, right? You know IKEA, right? So if you just watch the instructional, you build the bed or the closet and you go step by step, then you get the result done. But the next day, if I ask you to build the same thing without the manual, you don't know what to do because you just followed a few steps. Now in jiu-jitsu, what I think is pretty important because there's so many steps and so technical, uh, to get an understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve and what it is you're trying to do mechanically, but also conceptual. And that sounds pretty cool because everyone is using systems and concepts nowadays, but it is true if you just think about it. Okay, what is the overall concept of the technique we're learning? So I teach my classes in periods. So we don't do a class on arm bars and next week or next class on back takes. We work with a concept for a period of a week, 2 weeks, or a month even, and then I build that concept up. But it remains the same principle. So for example, an overall term like inverting, or an overall term like playing with lapel, and we get a lot of stuff done with lapel, and each time it's the same thing, but you get different points to different dots to connect. And I ask a lot of questions. I say, okay, why do I want to grab this lapel here? What's the option here? Why does he react like this? Okay, what's happening next? And then if no one knows, just okay, let's go experiment, see what happens, come back and share that knowledge, which sometimes feels like a little bit of a detour because I already know the answer, but there's such an emphasis between knowing the answer and giving the answer and experiencing the answer for yourself. For example, let's take some basic jiu-jitsu knowledge, like you should have an underhook, yeah, which is debatable always, but you should never cross your feet in back mount, which is debatable, obviously, but let's just take them for the fun. Now, if you never experienced getting ankle locked if you had your feet crossed, then the knowledge is not dropping as good as when you've experienced it, right? If you tell people who come from judo you should have an underhook in side control, keskatami, unless you're like playing good scarf hold, etc. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. Um, then they say, yeah, sure, and they still forget to take the underhook. So if you roll with them, you take the back 20 times, then the knowledge will drop. And hey, man, that's where you take the underhook. And that's where the knowledge sometimes drops when you just feel that minor detail. That's what coaching is all about. If you see a couple training and you see them making a mistake, just give that little detail and things just click, you know. So that way of teaching and learning new steps and experimenting and even making bad decisions and experimenting with the not the right way to do it, and then experimenting with the details and getting the information and it clicks. That's so important. I even have classes where I just take 10 minutes to okay, let's all do it wrong. So for example, we do a wrong kimura where you're not like baiting down on the shoulder and just extract your arm. Let's do it wrong 20 times. Okay, now I'm going to teach you how to do it right. And that feels like a detour. I'm still playing with okay when and how to use it, but it's just another tool. Just as instruction is a tool, inquiry-based learning is a tool, reverse classroom, flipped classroom is a tool. And yeah, I think that's a good way to play with the way we teach and learn instead of just this one traditional way of okay guys, warm-ups, listen to me, drill drill drill, live sparring. We do a lot of positional sparring, we do positional drills, we do drills with added resistance, we do drills or positions where I take away things like okay, you cannot do this or you cannot do that. We do rolls where the loser gets to choose a new starting position, like okay, I want to start in mount, I want to start in back mount, I want to start in side control. So you get to experiment all these positions and things that jiu-jitsu has to offer, and yeah, from there on, learn and expand your own
There's
knowledge.
a few questions now that I have because you made very nice examples of different kinds of teaching. And for example, I just realized, or I at least think that having this kind of gym exchange or going to different gyms is something that is not so usual in other martial arts. Whereas when I travel somewhere, I take my gi and my no-gi stuff, and I'm just gonna look for a gym. In most
Mm-hmm.
places, I already have my go-to gym, and I'm just experiencing different kinds of teachings. And it's so amazing that it's all right, right? Like it's all kind of correct or mostly correct, but there's just so many different kind of approaches that are also just yeah producing different results, because for example your inquiry based learning is something that I would really like for myself. So when I'm thinking of like giving courses for white belts, or like I would think of really inquiry based learning. And for example, I did my first private session with a friend for free who's a white belt, and we just worked on escapes. But I started the session by positional sparring, 3 minutes me on top, 3 minutes him uh, on top, and then discuss about hey, what happened, what worked, what
Mm-hmm.
didn't work. And this is how, yeah, you said like you make it stick to people because they remember what didn't work, what not to do. For example, your example about the kimura, yeah, you teach that grip, right? And then people just do it. But if they know how to do it wrong and then they see the difference, how much quicker it is when you do it right, I think you're not as likely to apply the wrong one in rolling, or at least like you might apply it and then like, oh, but it's much better this way. And then it's, yeah, a different kind of learning. But the question to this one would be like, can you do that from like zero, like a white belt who comes in for the first time and you have five of those and these are your people? Can you do still inquiry based learning when they have no clue whatsoever what's going on?
That's a great question and one I also wondered on a lot. So I'll get to that in a sec. What you said about traveling, that's also interesting. I think traveling to different gyms, and that could be classes, regular classes, but could also be seminars, could be events or anything, or open mat. I think that's a huge and great factor. I encourage all my students to also do that. The different cities I teach in, they aren't that far away, like an hour, maybe 45 minutes or an hour and a half. So everyone who trains with me is free to train at all the different places. They still get the same instructor, unfortunately, but they do have different training partners, different people. And then I also encourage them to go to different gyms. People who come from different gyms to my gym are always welcome to train. I have a lot of people doing that, from white belts to purple belts and brown belts, visiting sometimes black belts. They're all welcome. And I think that's a win-win both for my students and for them to get different exchanges, going to seminars, etc. I think that's a very good one. What I think is beautiful in jiu-jitsu and hope is yeah, will remain and even expand is that there's not that much competition between gyms. So, for example, with soccer here or like football, it's like okay, if you're team A, you shouldn't go to team B. There's like this competition vibe, you know, uh, and I don't really like that. Quick question: your camera is gone.
Yes, I'm
Are you
still there.
still
I'm
there?
sorry.
Okay, no worries. I hope we can cut that out. I'm continuing in three, two, one. So yeah, traveling and getting different instructors and different teaching styles and methods, I think that's very, very valuable. I still go to a lot of seminars myself. Every chance I get, I go to seminar, whether that be from black belts, brown belts, doesn't matter, no gi, leg lock specific, berimbolo specific. I want to get all these different techniques, like everyone does in a seminar, but I'm also going there to get different teaching methods, which I then can experiment with as a teacher myself. So it's funny because when I teach a lot of jiu-jitsu, I look at jiu-jitsu more from a teacher perspective than maybe a competitor will look at jiu-jitsu from a competitor perspective, or a student from like a technique perspective. So I use all these things together. Now, your second part of the question is whether the inquiry-based learning in that way would work for everyone starting out day one. And I think so, yes, with a side note. So people who come in jiu-jitsu, we think they should, okay, so first you learn like A, B, and you learn these basic moves, you learn the armbar from the guard, and blah, 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 or pass the guard, etc. And you have to go through this phase. But whoever decided that that is the way to start out jiu-jitsu, just because you and I had that experience, we should also share that with people. I don't agree. They don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, so anything you start with, they don't know what should have been the basics. You get what I mean? So if someone gets in, okay, roll rounds, okay, I teach you how to do an AB, I teach you how to do an armbar, I teach you how to pass the guard, this is a kimura, this is a choke, lapel choke, etc., rear naked choke, triangle, and you just go through these things, and for them it's like, yeah, sure, this is supposed to be the basic, and then you just drop them into live rolling. I think they also can get a lot of experience from inquiry-based learning, because in the beginning, who has the most questions in jiu-jitsu? I think it's someone starting out. White belts in general, but someone starting out, they're like, okay, what's happening? What's this? What's that? Why this? Why that? And they have so many questions. And then we go like, okay, no, don't mind, just do what I say. And then they're like, hopefully just biting by that and doing, okay, well, he says I shouldn't use strength, I should do this. He says I shouldn't exhaust myself, I should, stay calm, etc. Which is correct. So I'm kind of just talking without saying an exact opinion, but it's fun to think about and to talk about. Should that still be the way to go? I don't think so. When people start, if I have trial out class in my gym, they just go with the group. They do the technique we're doing that day, which could be basic, but which could also be like De La Hiva, whatever. And even so, who decides what's basic and not basic? We decided one day that a triangle is a basic move, and that De La Hiva is advanced. But if you look at the steps, the physical steps you make, and the triangle is a lot of steps, you know, it's basic because we do it a lot. But if you train at 10th Planet, then rubber guard is maybe basic. And if you train with a wrestling background, then your shots are maybe basic. And if you train with a judo background, then getting throws is basic. Whatever is basic is whatever you put time, effort, and energy in as a group, as a teacher, and as a student. But let's not go down a rabbit hole. So if you get a new white belt, they have a lot of questions, and just let them experiment that. I think the way you did that with the private, I think that's beautiful, and I would also do it like that. I usually, when I have a few trial classes or a workshop for a school or something, I take a big guy. I go like, okay, let's do side control. Let's just do a fun game. You escape my side control, which is a pin that everyone can understand. Even if you have zero martial arts experience, you can see, okay, the guy on top is in an advantage, right? So if you explain like, okay, but the guard is a good position, blah blah blah, then people who have a first experience are like, yeah, sure, buddy, but let's just take side control. I let them escape. They're like, bench pressing, suffering, won't work. And then I go on bottom. I take the big guys and hold me tight. Get a pin, whatever you want, boom boom, and you just escape side control. Okay, now I'm going to teach you how. And then the coin drops. I don't know if that's a good figure of speech, but then the dots connect. And we're still using a form of inquiry based, so I can still ask, okay, why is this bigger guy, I'm not that big and strong, why is he having such a hard time with holding me as opposed to me holding him? What's happening mechanically? What's happening technically? Now let's learn that. Then you can do the same thing with the guard. Okay, so you're on top, right? You have a good position. Okay, boom, sweep. Okay, wait, let's do that again. What happened? Sweep. Okay, why is that a good thing? Why should I sweep? Because now I get a top position. Do we end up in the same position? No, we're not reversing to guard. I'm actually on mount. So I have a good advanced position. I score 6 points by sweeping and mounting, and I can now attack. So let's teach you the sweep. Let's do some sweeps. What happens mechanically in sweep? Why, if I go sideways, it's pretty hard. At first, I have to get his weight off, disbalance, get the post, And then I let them like sweep without the post. So the experiment, okay, if you sweep and he posts, we have a problem. So how do we solve that problem? Yeah, we should take away that post. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So we go through these experimental drills as opposed to, okay, welcome to Jiu-Jitsu. Here's how you do an armbar for close guard, uh, and just follow these drills, which is not always a bad thing. You know, you have to start somewhere. But I do think being aware of this process, that's the first step. Just being aware that, okay, the way I learned it as a white belt and when I started out, I don't necessarily have to use that same way. There's different options, and playing with those and mixing those together and seeing what works. And then also you said about what would learn, that you would be good on the inquiry-based learning. Then as a coach, you should also understand there's a lot of people who don't go well with that, because everyone has their own jiu-jitsu, but everyone also has their own body style, but also their own way of learning. Some people learn visually, some people learn more auditive, some people learn more by doing, by experimenting, by feeling. Some people have short concentration spans. Instruction shouldn't be more than 10 seconds. And some people are still listening to me blabbing for like 2 minutes already, and they have long concentration spans. So mixing all these things together, these different teaching styles, and therefore catering to different people's learning styles, I think that's very important.
I think what you said is really interesting, but I also thought that you can screw it up by just having a monologue that is just centered and it's going for 5 minutes and people are just hearing you talk, and then it's like, okay, what was the basic move? Like he explained now five. Okay, which one are we doing? And I think it's from a teacher's perspective, and maybe the further you're in and the less kind of like this dialogue based sessions you did, the, the the less you might be able to understand how much struggle there is for a white belt to do even one technique, and then you're already explaining like two or three.
Exactly. And the thing is, we barely know. So sometimes you're doing these, or you, or like people in general, or me, or instructors are doing this instruction, like minute, 2 minutes, and they said, "Okay, guys, any questions? No, 3, 2, 1, or whatever. Let's go." Uh, and then everyone makes a lot of mistakes. Like, "Hey, did you get what we're supposed to do?" So if you keep the instruction short, and you just go a step, and you go conceptual, and then during the steps, I ask a lot of students, "Okay, what's the next step, Mark? What's the next step, Pete? What's the next step, Kim? What should we do here? Okay, why am I grabbing this lapel?" And then everyone is on the point of their seat, because anyone can get a question anytime. So they're just like sitting and thinking about Netflix. They're actually in the instruction. And at the end, when I wrap up, like in a minute or so, I just ask quickly, "Okay, so what are we going to do now?" And I just ask some people, "Okay, how we're going to drill, what we're going to drill, when we're going to switch, what's the overall technique?" Okay, getting the arm exposed, or getting a cross body angle so we can go for the back. Okay, how do we get there? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I ask a few people. So I check for myself. It's not a test for them to see if they paid attention. It's a test for myself to see if my information got there. Because if you just do a monologue, then I think like 20% of your instruction like finally makes it. But if you just ask questions, go back and forth, you can actually check that. There's this feedback. And if people are like, "Yeah, we're getting the back, I think, and you should," I'm like, "Okay, let's do the step. Let's make it easier." A lot of instructions, I plan to do a lesson one day, and then it turns out everyone is having way harder time understanding the concept than I thought. So I just dial it down. And sometimes I have a lesson and everyone's picking it up so quick, so I have to add some techniques. And you should be very flexible in this, because the only guy knowing what you're going to do that day is yourself. No one else cares, you know. And keep it short, and check in with people. You can see it. You can see people's eyes wandering off. You can see people looking like this. I don't know if you're just listening to audio, you cannot see my face, but looking very confused. Then you have to realize, hey, wait, it's getting too hard, it's getting too much. Let's dial it down a step. It doesn't matter if today we only get to the basics. It doesn't matter if, for example, we're drilling, we're doing De La Hiva, and everyone only doesn't get any of the sweeps, but they just get the main position, the main guard right. Yeah, then you go to your colored belts and give them a bit more challenge. But it's never wrong to dial in your class and be flexible in your instruction.
But I think you're taking a lot from that, really from your educational background, because when I now thought about how you are addressing the people and calling them out and asking them to do, to to tell you about the next move, it really sounds like you're in a classroom. And I find it a super interesting concept because usually in a classroom, the worst teachers are the ones who are just holding a monologue, right? And are just pumping you full of information, whereas probably 70% won't stick. But this way, because everybody is on alert, because they might have to react, you're just having much more engagement.
Yeah, you should also be cautious on knowing which people to take out, because there's also people in a room with, like yesterday, we had over 30 students. There's some people when I say, okay, so what's the next move, Natalie? And they freak out. You know, the pressure of explaining something or being pointed out in a room of people, that can be, you know, for an instructor, that's normal, but that can be pretty challenging for some people. So you have to be aware of that. You have to have good people knowledge and your uh, how do you say,
Yeah.
pedagogues. Anyway, your skills on group structures should also be good. And sometimes I do this on purpose. I give people a chance, you know, like just it's okay. And there's nothing wrong. Even in my class, we do a lot of show and tell, like people do a technique. And there's never anything wrong. Even if someone completely messes it up, okay, that's cool. Let's help each other. There's no laughing, there's no nothing. Everyone is accepted, everyone is okay. And if everyone feels safe, then they ask a lot of questions by themselves. So someone's like, okay, anyone has a question? Yeah, I get a lot of questions every technique. Now, this is a very important one. People think if you get questions, then the technique isn't clear enough. No, I think getting questions is very, very important. Sometimes I get questions with something I just explained 5 seconds ago. I'm like, okay, that means I failed at my job of making you understand what's happening. And it's really good that you ask a question because it means you feel safe enough to ask a question in front of all these people, which is amazing. I think every question is important, and I'm really, really strict on this, even with my substitute teachers, my blue belts, who sometimes substitute for classes, do kids classes. I talk about teaching and how we do this as a group. And I think if no one asks questions during your technique, then you're not an amazing instructor. People just don't feel safe because there's a lot of questions and even stupid questions. It doesn't matter even if you have the best instruction in the world, people ask questions. I've seen this on seminars of world-renowned black belts and competitors. People ask a lot of questions. People ask a lot of stupid questions, which you think is like, man, that's obvious, but it's their question. So it's 100% right and 100% good, and you have to answer that. You have to cater to that. Because if they have the question, you should answer that. It's your fault, and it's your job to have them understand, and they should feel safe enough to ask a lot of questions. You should encourage that. You should encourage people to be involved in the process and feel safe. Now, another tool I use sometimes is if people have a question, they're like, okay, this is working for me, maybe 2-on-2, you know, like drilling. And then I take the group together. I said, okay, cool. So Marco had this question. Could you just show us what's happening? And then I have the group answer. Now, what's happening here? If two people have a question, like for example, okay, every time I go for the triangle, I cannot get his posture down. Okay, cool. So show us. And then you have this guy, and he just doesn't lift his hips. He just tries to curl it with his heel down. I'm just taking an example here. Um, and then I don't answer the question, which I could have done 100 times, but I have the group see it. Okay, guys, who knows what's missing here? What tip can you give to Mark or to Pete or whoever to improve his triangle? And then a lot of people raise their hand. Hey, try lifting your hips, or try getting the angle, or try whatever, whatever. And then you have a group process where everyone's learning. Not only did the guy who asked the question learn because he got his answer, but also the guy answering the question learned because he was aware of the mistake made. And by explaining, you learn a lot too. So I love it when I see blue belts or white belts explaining stuff to other people. Even sometimes you have to like intervene when they're explaining stuff wrong, in your opinion. But even so, if it's not like dangerous, sometimes I'll just let them go through it because the more you explain things, even if I see someone explaining something wrong, sometimes I see them being aware of that and like, oh wait, no, that's maybe not the right way to do so. But explaining, asking questions in a group and having them answer their questions and checking in with each other is an amazing way of learning and having everyone involved because everyone is allowed to answer the question. So everyone can feel free to give their way. And I know a lot of people in Jiu-Jitsu would love to share what they think is right. I see so many white belt coaching in every club I go to and people helping each other, which is an amazing phenomenon. What we do is we dial into that. Not too much. There's clearly one instructor, but I'm not like killing it out every time. No, I'm the only one teaching. Just listen to me. My rule is law. No, that's bullshit. We can learn from each other. And if someone makes a basic mistake, it's too easy to just answer it. Okay, let's get together, guys. Why is this happening? Why is he getting his back taken every time? Yeah, he doesn't have an underhook. Okay, cool. And then I haven't tried, because what also happens a lot with instruction is people are practicing. Coach comes, he gives a tip, like, hey man, try to keep your hand there, or try to use this grip, or use your wrists more. Okay, bye. And the coach just walks away. So you do not get to get feedback on if your information was correctly interpreted, and if it landed, and if he knows how to apply it, which are a few different things. So first off, you say something, you understand what you're saying, and the student, the white belt in this case, for example, is nodding, saying, yes, I understand, but doesn't understand. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So you should stay there just for a few seconds to see if it got there, if your information is getting applied. Or you should be the one, you should be the dummy. You said, hey, let me do it on me. Let me feel that. Try it on me. Try to do it like this. And then you feel them improving or still doing it wrong, and you can give tips again. So just walking around, giving answers and giving information out like you Google, that's not teaching. And you were talking about a classroom where it's just one teacher giving out information. We have Google for that. We have Jiu-Jitsu instructionals for that, and we have like an encyclopedia with all Jiu-Jitsu techniques for that. Teaching and learning is a different thing from spreading out information. And spreading out information is an important detail on teaching, but it's not the main goal. And that, I hope that doesn't sound weird.
No, it's amazing what you said, and really, I see a lot of these techniques that you're using applied in. I just thought back heavily on my school years and the times when you were saying in the beginning you need to know who to ask, which people to basically call out, because for some it can be incredibly shameful because they don't know the answer or they don't like to
Mhm.
speak in front of people. And I felt like in school this was used rather to intimidate people than to actually make them grow. And in the environment that you're talking about, it's all there to make each other grow. It's not there to discriminate or to make people ashamed, but it's actually to lift them up, which is just amazing. And I think this is something that jiu-jitsu is really unique in, the way of teaching, the way of sharing your craft, your art, which you just don't do in other sports as much.
Yes, I think it's sad to hear if this is used to put people like up there on a shameful way, or even confronting way. I haven't had that bad experience myself a lot, but I do know that feeling when I was in high school myself. But yeah, it's all about growth, and you can also play with that. There's also a gray area between never being in front of the group and being in front of the whole class. There's also like sub things. Sometimes I take like three white belts together for people. I said, hey, cool, Marco, can you just quickly show that? And I make it very light, and can just, that's the feeling of teaching. You should feel if something is okay and safe. And then they just do it in front of three people, or in front of two friends, or in front of their favorite training partner, or in front of two trial classes who even have their first experience jiu-jitsu. And he feels like, oh, wait, compared to someone having their first class, I, as a 6-month white belt, I'm like an expert, and they get this confidence boost. And that's the next step in getting them in front of 10 people, in front of, and not everyone has to do this. And not everyone, you don't have to cater to every student being good in front of a group. That's not your job. But I think, not necessarily as if every student shouldn't be a competitor, you know, but you do have to facilitate, I think that's a good word in English, provide them with that opportunity. So I encourage every student to at least try competition once. If they don't like it, then they have an honest opinion on that. That's the same way I think I should encourage them to at least, show a technique once. We now did a month where I had my blue belts teach classes, just their favorite technique, just one class, and I was there and observing, not correcting, not anything, just giving them the chance to do a very easy beginner's class. They might not have any aspiration to be a teacher one day, or instructor, or kids class, or whatever. I don't mind. I just want to give them the chance. I also want to encourage them to take that chance and just try it out. Not only if they to see if they like teaching, but also to understand a bit more what jiu-jitsu is and how it is to teach. Because if you have been the teacher yourself, you therefore respect way more sometimes because you get to understand how hard it is. You're like, whoa, that's harder than it looks like, and you get to respect more being a student. Just like competing, it's important to experience once or twice or a few times to see if you like it and continue, or to see if you're like, oh, that's not for me. I also encourage my blue belts when we had an in-house tournament lately, just very a white belt tournament, very basic, and I encourage them to be a referee. I give them a course just all for free. I help them get the things, and we always have a backup ref. But I get them to experience being a ref and seeing how extremely hard that is and how stressful. And then they can say, "Hey, I like that. I want to do that more often." And usually they say, "Oh my God, never again." But these things are also jiu-jitsu. Most people just come to train recreational. They want to get better at jiu-jitsu. They love the sports, and that's our main focus. Period. But I also want to at least facilitate or give room, like not my main attention, but just give room to show and tell, sharing technique, being better in front of a group. Because we're also trying to make people better people. That's my whole job. Jiu-Jitsu is just my instrument, or capoeira, or MMA, or whatever. To have them try competition, reffing, volunteering at competitions, helping at the table, if you know what I mean. And all these things around Jiu-Jitsu, helping plan our events when we have seminars, um, helping build the gym. All these things we do as a team to make these people better people social-wise. And Jiu-Jitsu is a perfect tool for that. People get confidence, people learn martial arts, etc. There's all these benefits which all of us know, but there's so much more in Jiu-Jitsu than just the Jiu-Jitsu. Of course, 90% of your focus should be the Jiu-Jitsu. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be different from the mainstream here, but just getting a wider perspective. And some people, I can immediately see they love presenting things. I had a white belt recently who is a teacher on high school, a history teacher. And he asked me, hey, I'm not a blue belt yet, but I would love to teach a small technique one day to experiment that. And then I think most professors, I don't know, I'm not even, no, it doesn't matter. I, for instance, thought, okay, how would it look like if a white belt would teach even for all the color belts? And I think, yeah, if we put it the right way, then if he's motivated intrinsically, like he wants to teach, he even made a whole plan. He mailed it to me. He said, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Completely passionate. Then who am I to say, no, you cannot do that because you're still white belt? The guy's a teacher by profession. Yeah, sure. And if you teach a trying a little bit wrong, I can intervene. That's no problem. We can help each other out. We can see if it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. I don't even care. As long as it's not dangerous, no one gets injured for one class, and people are just having fun. Let's go. Let's do it. Um, so yeah, I love catering to that. Obviously to a max, because if every white belt says I want to teach, yeah, okay, that's not happening, guys. Same for every blue belt, purple, whatever. But facilitating and giving the opportunity, giving the stage, providing the space for people to grow, man. If jiu-jitsu isn't about that, then what is it about?
So many points to pick on, and I think what you're also describing that you're doing is you're building a community by not just doing stuff on the mats, but also taking it outside, taking people to competitions, reffing, etc. It's really cool. You're just making them engaged, and as I said, I think it's a great instrument to make people better people, because you're just, I don't know. I think jiu-jitsu made me such a much more respectful person to other people. It's just humbling, and yeah, it's just shaving off your ego bit by bit all the time. And I think it can bring people very close together. But what I wanted to pick on now is the belts, because we've been talking about a lot about white and blue belt, and for us as practitioners, it's a common word. Like as a white belt, there's some kind of significance and clarity to it, what it means. But for our listeners, can you explain what each of the belts in jiu-jitsu would mean for you?
Okay, so I'm really happy with those last few words because I am not a what's the word? A authority. That's word. I'm not an authority on what the belt should mean. I'm still figuring out jiu-jitsu on a daily basis for myself and being like, yeah, sometimes you get to this point where you're very confident, like a white belt. When you get to blue, you're like, I know exactly how jiu-jitsu is. And then as you mature, you're like, holy shit, I know nothing. And so I'm not an authority on that, but I can tell you what it means to me. So that's a good one. Just my own personal, humble opinion on this subject. I'm not so experienced in, but I think as a white belt in jiu-jitsu, I think that's the most important belt. The foundation gets laid down, and there's a huge difference between not doing jiu-jitsu and doing jiu-jitsu. So it's kind of cliche, but the most important belt is getting from the couch to the white belt. I think it's an important phase to experiment, uh, and most of all enjoy jiu-jitsu. Enjoyment should be on every belt, obviously. The thing is, a white belt, you should really fall in love with jiu-jitsu. You should be in awe by the cool techniques you see when you see someone doing a berimbolo or a Minari roll or awesome takedown or whatever. You should be like, wow, I want to learn that stuff. I want white belts to be um, enthusiastic, and it should also be the phase where you are the most open to lay your entire foundation. The cliche things, obviously focusing on your basics, laying your fundamentals for jiu-jitsu. But the thing is, a white belt, you should also feel free to experiment. Yeah, as long as it's not dangerous, like getting white belts to do rolling heel hooks or flying arm bars or suplexes. But if they want to experiment with some fancy techniques, I think it's very important, because that's very important for the enjoyment of jiu-jitsu. If you say to white belt, you should only drill this knee cut pass or opening the guard 2,000 times, they're going to quit jiu-jitsu. And most people quit jiu-jitsu as a white belt. So I think it's very important to, this is funny because I'm still talking about my teaching perspective and how we should retain white belts. Sorry, that wasn't your question. Back to what a white belt means to me. White belt means putting your foundation for jiu-jitsu, finding your love for the gentle art, falling in love, and experimenting a lot. Just being open. I think a white belt should never focus too much on their game yet, which is kind of contradictory, because on one side I say they should enjoy jiu-jitsu, and having their own game is a part of enjoyment. But on the other side, I say they shouldn't focus too much on their own game, because that limits their open foundation and, yeah, getting the wide base of jiu-jitsu. So there's a nice contradiction in those two, but both are true. Now, blue belt, I think, is a position, a belt, where you should have a good understanding of the basic positions of jiu-jitsu. You're not there when you execute them all on your timing isn't perfect, your technique might not be smooth, your transitions are a bit harder, but you know a lot of positions and techniques. You know stuff from mount, you know stuff from back mount, you know a few different sweeps, both standing and seated, you know different guard systems, maybe you know how to mix one or two together. Um, and I think that should be a nice solid base. And what I look for in a blue belt as a teacher, and what I think for myself was important as a blue belt, is not being just good on the mat. Like, you can have this one blue belt who has this killer double leg or killer guillotine, he wins every time, but that's it. And you can have this blue belt who's not like winning every roll or competition, but he knows stuff from all the positions. He knows some takedowns. He knows some reverse del Hiva. He knows some takedowns. He knows some stuff from back control. He knows some good knee on belly positions. He knows some half guard stuff. I think that's a well-rounded blue belt. A blue belt is like proof that you have done your fundamental starting point as a white belt, and that it's there. And at blue belt, as you get mature in the belt, you can have a bit more. You can start catering a bit more to your favorite game, which isn't like necessarily a specific system, but more like, okay, do I prefer playing on top or playing on bottom? Am I better at playing guard and sweeping, or am I better at passing the guard, playing top positions, and generally getting into those? But it's also the belt where you no, sorry, let's keep it like that. Then at purple belt, I think that's where it transitions. Switching between position systems becomes way more important. The things in between the bases, like for example, if you have a game of baseball, you have these honks, I don't know what they're called in English, the bases. And the bases are like blue belt, mount, back mount, side control, etc. And as a purple belt, you should be fluid in switching between those, going from side control to north south, going from that to knee belly, going back and forth between upper body, lower body, etc. And also, where you had your game in blue belt and getting confident in being on top or bottom, purple belt is a belt you should completely focus on being well-rounded again. Like, if you prefer playing guard, then you should force yourself to play on top, even with tougher opponents. If you like playing on top, getting takedown, getting pass, pull guard, play the guard, because you have to get better at the things you're good at, but also get better at the things you're not that good at. I think purple belt is also the belt where you get to skip warm-ups. No, sorry, this is it's also the belt where you should really focus a lot on details. And I think, like I just mentioned, transitions, and it's also the belt where you start, where you should really start helping out students around you. You could be very egoistic in jiu-jitsu, like, okay, I just want to get better at jiu-jitsu, train and compete. That's also good. Those people are very well appreciated within a team. But it's also the belt, like blue belt maybe already, but more so at purple, where you could really be helping out teaching or helping the kids or helping white belts or blue belts with correcting techniques. Um, and that shouldn't necessarily be true for everyone, because some people, like I mentioned, don't really like teaching or helping out or whatever. But you get a bit of, the only thing I'm trying to say is you get a bit more responsibility. You know, a blue belt is something white belts can aspire to. It's just the next step. But they aren't always technically enough to start helping out a lot. But purple belt is like a legit advanced belt. It's a nice place to also get into this thing. So yeah, I think getting more advanced positions and focusing mainly on transitions and getting things smoothed out. You know, a white belt does a triangle, and theoretically it's the same technique as a purple belt does a triangle. What makes a difference is the details in pressure, the details in the setup. I think you should have more setups to a triangle, have more ways to mix it, and then the purple belt is where you get to smoothly switch from the triangle to the armbar to the omblat, you know, switch back and forth, switch from upper to lower body, switch from triangle to going back to sweeping, from sweeping back to submissions, and getting those transitions in. Yeah, I think that's funny because I'm talking about it. I never really thought about it, but yeah, I think I agree on myself with myself. Then brown belt, yeah, man, I have no idea. I'm brown belt myself. I have no idea what I'm doing. Actually, I have no idea what I'm doing in jiu-jitsu anyway. I think a lot of people have that feeling. I hope so. Brown belt, I think it's important because it's funny. I don't know about your gym, but most gyms I go to, the the fewest represented people are brown belts. There's always like one or two brown belts. You know, it's weird. I've never been to a gym where there's more brown belts than purple belts. Usually like a lot of white belts, a lot of blue belts, a handful of purple belts, a single or a few brown belts, and then maybe some black belts. I've had gyms where there's more black belts than brown belts. It's weird. But I think brown belt is a very important belt for me. I'm just going to speak for myself because you have to understand you're not there yet by a long shot. Even at black belt, I think you're not there yet. You know, the cliche thing like now the journey only starts, you know. Okay, let's not go down that rabbit hole too much, but I think you have to understand that you're still working constantly on developing your game. I think you can say with confidence that you have a solid base. Well, you should obviously. Um, you have a solid base. You have your game. You have your backups when you're not playing your favorite game because you made those in purple belt. Um, you have this thing where you help out students, teaching, etc. All those things that were important at purple belt. And now I think at brown belt, it's always staying open and not being like, okay, this is my jiu-jitsu. Being open to do new stuff. For example, if you're a brown belt, you learn nice basic traditional jiu-jitsu, you should be open to the new. Should be open to do more leg locks, being open to do more of wrestling, like the new meta, being more pins. Always stay open. Don't be like, okay, I made it to brown belt. This is my jiu-jitsu, and it's just like it is. Being open again, I think getting that white belt feeling is very important. Like always be a white belt in your head. You know, be open, see a technique, and don't judge. Like I have blue and purple belts doing this. Like they see a technique. Okay, guys, we're gonna do scissor sweep. But like, I know this. Done. I mastered this. It's ridiculous. Yeah, even Mike Tyson trained his left hook to the last. He's not. You're never gonna if you play soccer at a high level, and the coach says, okay, we're just gonna play ball to each other. You're not like, I know this. Skip to the next thing. In jiu-jitsu, we have this a lot. It's like arm bars from guard, done. Let's do the next thing. I want to learn the new cool, super cool bolo stuff, crap ride, whatever. So be open to new techniques. Don't rust into like, okay, I made it to brown belt. No new stuff for me. Just this is my game. And yeah, um, man, I had a point to make. Forgot, but yeah, being open to new techniques and always improving your jiu-jitsu. I think that's important at brown belt, and realizing you're just getting started. For me, that's an important one. And I think the hardest one for me, now is that's very personal is don't be afraid to make mistakes because I have this imposter syndrome, like a lot of people have in jiu-jitsu. I think I spoke about it with many well-known instructors, where I got completely flabbergasted when they said they had huge imposter syndrome and being insecure about their jiu-jitsu. I think that's normal and gave me confidence to also speak out on that. And if you're a brown belt or a higher belt, then maybe you're too afraid to lose a round of sparring or do a technique wrong or do something out of the box, and that completely limits that white belt mentality you should have. For instance, I focus mainly on nogi. I like to do submission grappling. I focus a lot on, or my game is specifically tailored to leg locks, which is a whole story by itself, how that came around. But recently I went to a gi berimbolo seminar, which is totally not my game. And I was there like rolling around doing berimbolos like a complete white belt. And I loved every second of it. And sometimes I'm like, hey, should I do this because it looks ridiculous? No, I think you should really do that, and don't be afraid to fail or try something new. And yeah, I think that is important at every belt. But the higher belt you get, because if a blue belt makes a mistake or gets stabbed by a white belt, it's okay, it can happen. But if you get to purple or brown belt, then don't take every role too seriously. Experiment, do some weird stuff, yeah, and get tapped, because getting tapped is very important in jiu-jitsu. Even if you get the higher belts, you should still get tapped. If you don't get tapped, you're not surrounding yourself with the correct people, or you're not challenging yourself, because both of these are true. So if I'm brown belt, I roll, for example, with my students who are white and blue belts, whatever, I should still get tapped, or at least get challenged. Let's just put it that way: get challenged. Okay, how do I get challenged? Either they're really good, that's awesome because then I did my job correctly, or I put myself in hard positions. I try to experiment. I try to do some new stuff. And sometimes I do this like these crazy fancy submissions or fancy things that don't work at all. But just to get a challenge to myself, I get a heavy blue belts on top so I can learn my escapes better. Or I travel to different gyms to get more challenge to roll with other black belts. And yeah, try new stuff and don't rush too much in feeling like, okay, I made it this far. This is my jiu-jitsu. Boom, this is what it is. Stay open-minded. Stay white belt. Yeah, never for black belt. I have no idea. I can only think about it. I think that's a very important belt, but also a very, I'm not trying to sound weird, but a very um, overvalued thing, because we think at black belt you have it all figured out. That's what I'm just trying to say. So I don't think it's overvalued. I think black belt is an amazing achievement that one day I hope to make, but you don't have it figured out at black belt. It's just like when you're a kid, you think your parents have it all figured out, right? Or when you're like 30, you're like old, you have everything figured out. Man, I'm 30 plus, and I have no idea what I'm doing in life. I got this house, I got married, everything, but just doing something. Just like our parents are just doing something, and their parents before them. Like a black belt is the same thing. You have this huge responsibility, and you're this example, and you should know everything on every technique. And that it's even more true as what I said to brown belt. Keep that white belt mentality, and don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to show that you're just a person learning jiu-jitsu. So I see too often times that higher belts get asked a question that they don't know the answer to and just say, yeah, that doesn't work, or I don't do that shit, or no, okay, I don't know. And it doesn't matter if you say you don't know. You cannot know everything in jiu-jitsu, man. It's impossible. So I think black belt is a powerful belt. You have a lot of knowledge. I think there's also with great knowledge comes also the slight responsibility to share that knowledge. Don't pushing anyone out there, but or trying to hurt anyone's feelings. But you have this beautiful knowledge in jiu-jitsu. You should at least try to share that. Um, and yeah, being this example and being this role model in jiu-jitsu doesn't mean you have it all figured out, man. And that's okay. I hope that when I reach black belt, and I hope that I do what I say now as a brown belt. And if anyone out there disagrees and knows me, please give me that feedback. Stay humble, stay open-minded, and don't be afraid to fail and tell people that you have not figured it all out yet. Because being this black belt and acting like you're God is way more dangerous and helping no one further than being a black belt and people look like, whoa, he also gets tapped. Yeah, he also gets tapped. He's a black belt. And he gets tapped and he makes mistakes and he's learning and he doesn't know all the techniques, and that doesn't matter. and that's very important. Um, so that's what I mean with
But I
over
think
valuing.
it's
Yeah.
very necessary that you say that because, for example, like I mentioned it earlier, ego plays a big role in our lives, and you can see the ego like bear on the mats, right? For example, I'm a blue belt, and I do my best job to not get tapped by white belts, but still try new techniques. But last time I got tapped by one of my favorite submissions, which is like a mounted triangle, because I didn't take it serious enough, and it
Right.
hurt my ego. It's like, what the fuck? Like, why? Like, how can you do that? But and then I was still proud of that guy, you know, it's freaking awesome. And of course, yes, I need that as well. You need these kind of ego checks. You need to just sometimes be humble a little bit and, yeah, have that feeling of, I do not have figured it all out. And even though I know that, sometimes you get, even as a blue belt, or depending on which situation in life, you get into that bubble where you think, like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. But then something comes along, it's like, nope,
Hmm.
you don't. And I think this has to stay true for the rest of our lives because otherwise you will never get this Kaizen continuous improvement mindset that we actually all need to be continuously getting better in life. And
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And challenging yourself to get out of the bubble, because if you just surround yourself with your friends who don't do jiu-jitsu or with starting white belts, then you will feel like a god all the time. So surround yourself with different people. Go to that challenging, go do that challenging role or role with that black belt, or go to that seminar on that topic you know shit about. Sorry, and sit there and be like, oh my god, there's so much more to this. Or go to that wrestling class, or go to that wrestling background, catch wrestling, or luta lever or submission grappling teacher. You're like, wow, these techniques are way different than what I learned. Or go to this different school, go to this 10th planet thing, go to this De La Riva school, go to this Gracie Barra school and see different techniques, different things, and see how what you think is your game, how you fail in a lot of different games that are also out there. And this ego check, yeah, ego is something that we say jiu-jitsu takes out the ego, but um, in a way it does. But also there's ego throughout all the belt ranks, man. It's just in different forms. In the beginning, it's more winning or losing with your training partners, and then there's ego in who knows more about a certain technique. Then there's ego whose gym is growing. Then there's ego on there's ego on so many things, man. And I myself also guilty of that on occasion and on many occasions. And I just try to be very, very. I just keep a mirror up and be very aware of my ego and decide whether it's necessary or not, because ego isn't always a bad thing, and you should have feedback on it. You should be aware of it, and then you get to choose, like, hey man, ego is also something that can boost your confidence. Ego is also something that can be used, just as with all those teaching tools I was talking about. I don't like giving a black and white, this is the good way, this is the bad way. I just be, okay, be aware and choose what to do with it, and keep your ego in check, or look for people to catch your ego in check. For instance, I have a subgroup with some of my students, friends, people I know of, and I ask their opinion on almost everything I do, and I ask their feedback on everything I do to keep myself in check. Because if I think I know it all, that's the point I think I completely screwed up. So I ask them, I even ask white belts, okay, what do you think of this? How should we do that? And you should find a balance between being a leader and a role model and owner of the gym and instructor and saying this is the way we go, but also being completely open to people's feedback and tips. I ask feedback at the end of some of my classes. I don't do it every week because it gets chaotic. But some classes, hey guys, did you like this way of training? You know, and if people say yeah or no, that's not good enough for me. I want to say yes, I enjoyed this because. And if people say this class sucked, I'm like, thank you, but I cannot use that information. So tell me what sucked and how, what specifically can I improve. But I ask this feedback of people to keep my ego in check and to improve what we're doing as a team. Yeah, the ego at belts I think is different from belt to belt, like I just said. But there's ego in jiu-jitsu, man, from day one to the final day, and I do think it gets way less and less. It should, there's always exceptions, and people are people. But saying it's not there, that's being ignorant, man. It's there, and you should just be aware of it. And the best feedback you get should be yourself. You should be hard on yourself. You should be honest with yourself. You should be honest if you're like, you know, sometimes. because I started out very light in jiu-jitsu. I'm now at 72 kilos, but I started out way lighter, like minus 65. I still sometimes have this feeling that I'm super small and light, and I get this huge ego boost. Like I rolled a while ago with a guy who was 120 kilograms. He was already doing jiu-jitsu for over 10 years. He was a blue belt. Doesn't matter. I'm like, wow, I got to sweep him, submit him, got to do all the things I want, and I feel really great because he's twice my weight, and that's ego popping up. I'm like, hey man, I shouldn't feel that, Jiu-jitsu. Obviously, I should sweep him and submit him and play my game because I'm a higher belt. Um, but still, there's that ego popping up, being aware of it, and then you get to choose like, you know what? I don't give a fuck. I feel good because I submitted a 120 kilo guy easily. That can be there. But the thing then, or you could say like, hey man, I'm a brown belt. I shouldn't be so full of myself and stay humble. Then the big difference is what you think, what you feel, and what you speak out. So it's hypocrite because I'm speaking it out right now. But if you go blasting into everyone like, yeah, I got to submitted this higher belt, like you're a blue belt. I submitted a purple belt. Yeah, you can feel good about that. Obviously, that's cool, man. You should enjoy that. You shouldn't be like, oh, I cannot enjoy that. No, that's ridiculous. But speaking it out to everyone around you, that's the difference between ego and ego. You get
Definitely,
what I
and I
mean?
think what you said is crucial, which is the awareness. You can never kill your ego because that would quite literally kill yourself. I'm really of that opinion because you need that ego as a driving force. But what
Mm-hmm.
I've heard or like read recently is about silencing the ego. And this is very interesting. You're not muting it, but you're making it more quiet, and you're doing it by addressing it when it comes up, or by as you're doing it, having a conversation. Usually the ego, if you're not aware of it, is a monologue, and it tells you like, yeah, you did such a great job submitting him, etc. But if you're then having this conversation and asking like, did I really? Is that so great? Do I really have to have that feeling, or is it just valid? You're just acknowledging the ego, and you're just not doing the thing that you said. We're just bragging about crushing somebody. And I think awareness is the key to everything. Just being aware of something, even if you're not able to manage it yet, which I think we all fail to manage all of the things that we want to manage. But having the awareness and knowing when you did something wrong, or when you could improve something, is so important. And this is also why I love that you said the feedback. Getting feedback is so important, and we're not doing it enough. I'm still planning to actually do a feedback monologue episode in this season because it's so important and it's so little taught. So I, for example, am a people's manager, and this year and last year I already started developing them. And one aspect that I focus on was giving and receiving feedback, but mainly giving feedback because we have to talk to couriers, and like you first have to make a person be able to give objective feedback, which is not anything that we learn in school. So you actually have to come up with models or find
Mm-hmm.
something like this beer model: situation, behavior, impact, and requests, to make it easy for people and to depersonalize it. But having raw feedback, like you just asking people, is I think the best that you can do to improve and have your ego checked.
I know you're pretty big on self improvement. Huh? You checked out the podcast and read a little bit about you and your personal situation, trying to improve. You have a managing role at the company you work in, right? And the way you say you're open to feedback, I think that's very important and being open to it. But you just said about being self aware. How do you, because you're putting so much time in self improvement, how do you focus, or where do you get your information from, or being more self-aware? How does it work for you? How are you learning that or going
That's
through
a
that
very good
process?
question. So, I do go to therapy, for example. I started at 1.5 years ago because of different topics. One was that I was just overworked at work, and I've been preaching for people to go to therapy for a long time, even before I did it myself. But then I got a bonus in the company. I was like, yes, now is the time to invest in myself. And do have some money in Bitcoin, some in gold and stuff like that. But I think the best investment that you can do is in yourself. So I invested with therapy, I did a little bit of coaching, and I read a lot of books. So every evening I try to read for 10, 20, 30 minutes, just as much as I can get in. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you know, just having conversations.
And are those books on self improvement, or are those just like fiction books just for the reading
Oh no,
purpose?
books. I really try to go topic specific. So, for example, now
Mhm.
a colleague recommended to me to read Never Split the Difference, which is a negotiating technique book. It's written by an FBI hostage negotiator, and it's really just amazing
Hmm.
because like negotiation takes place a lot in our daily lives, and we don't even notice it. And for example, like last time, I talked to my direct report and told her, hey, instead of saying no to something, just ask your counterpart, okay, how should I do that? That plays the ball back in their court, and it's like, okay, let's come up with a solution together because either I'm going to help you figure it out, or it wasn't that interesting and we don't need to put in that much effort. And there's so many books that have just like small techniques that stick. Like if I read a 500-page book, there's maybe like 5 sentences that just clicked for me and that I tried to implement. Like, for example, Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic and Roman
Hmm.
emperor,
Yes.
um,
Stoicism.
he,
Yeah, you spoke a few times on that. Really cool.
he did, for example, the worry. Ooh, oh man, how was it called? I think it's like a worry trajection. So if you're really worried about a topic or a problem right now, try to think 5 or 10 years ahead. How much will you remember that moment right now? Like how big of an impact will it have 5 years from now? And then
Mm.
most of our biggest worries are just marginal. And yeah, I think there's very little that you can do other than reading books and really trying to listen to podcasts. But even that, like when you're just listening, you're sometimes not 100% actively working on something. But when you're reading something, you really have to focus on getting it. And this is why I really recommend reading and yeah, just listening to people, just listening more and really trying to put your ego aside and coming up with an answer while listening, which I'm very guilty of because I have a very problem solving minded brain. So when somebody tells me of an issue, I would like to blab out and give the solution. Whereas most of the time, that's not required from me. Most of the time, especially in a relationship, for example, I need to listen more. Like the more I talk, the more harm can I do. But the more I listen, the more I can actually feel out what it is that the other person needs.
Man, thank you so much for that, man. That's really interesting because I'm super guilty on a few of those things. It's actually pretty funny. You talk about listening and relationships. My wife's sitting 2 meters away from me, so she shouldn't hear this. But yeah, I think I don't know if it's men in general, but I myself, let's just keep it like that. I also really want to solve things. That's the puzzle maker, and it's easy to talk about that from a coach perspective, like seeing someone make a mistake, trying to solve it, and say, okay, let them just make the mistake, let them experience it themselves. But also in the day-to-day life, like with my relationship or with any form of relationship. So I'm also talking about friends, colleagues, whatever. Um, Trying to solve things isn't always the way to solve things. That sounds weird. So let's make that a nice quote. Trying to solve things doesn't solve things. That's a good one. But I 100% agree on that. And also, I'm also really guilty on listening to answer. You get what I mean? It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay. And that's my enthusiasm often that kicks in, which is sometimes a good thing. Yeah, getting all this enthusiastic energy in teaching, whatever, and what I do, and hence the name Energia, a lot of passion. But it's also one of my, how do you say, downfalls, bad sides, because that prevents me from actually listening. And one point you made that hit home really hard is what you said about therapy. I think that's a really, really interesting one. Um, I work with a lot of people like drug addicts and people who've been sentenced for community service. I guide them using martial arts, but also different things. I sometimes do that as a side job. Um, and I encourage those people, but also normal, like everyday people, to go to therapy. Like, okay, if you're serious about your body, you go to a physiotherapist, check your body. If you're serious about your teeth, you go to a dentist. And if you're serious about your head or your heart, you go to any form of therapy. And therapy isn't necessarily going to a shrink and sitting there and talking. Therapy can be any form of therapy that works for you. And it's very, I don't know how to pronounce the English word, hypocritical. that I encourage people to do things that I don't do myself. So you just held a huge mirror in my face, which I really enjoy because the same thing goes for exercise. I do jiu-jitsu, capoeira. I teach sometimes 4 or 5 classes a day, and I teach 7 days a week, so I have no rest days. Then I also that's also one point. I say people you should get some rest days in between because your body needs to adapt and rest. But I'm not doing it myself, so that's ridiculous. I also say, yeah, you should maybe supplement your training, your martial arts training, with strength and conditioning. Well, that's something I just picked up recently, doing some strong lift 3 times a week, getting some strength and conditioning to get a healthy body and get stronger muscles to protect my joints. But there's been a long period of a year or two that I didn't do any strength conditioning training myself, but I was advocating for it. Same thing goes with a diet. My wife is actually a dietitian, and my diet is sometimes pretty shit. I have periods where it's very good. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't eat fast food a lot, but I try to be really clean with that, obviously because of my work. But there's periods where I just live on, waffles as breakfast, a sandwich in between, and skip dinner because I'm just stressed, and I live on coffee. So it's very hypocrite to do this. I said, yeah, you should read. You should, some things that I really do. I also advocate, like train. I try to do yoga twice a week to stretch and stay flexible. I do a lot of cold water swimming. I also heard you speak about cold showers. We go swimming the whole year round, even in the snow. I take showers 5 to 10 minutes, ice cold. I go swimming in the lake. But that I actually do. But there's also a lot of things I advocate for which I don't do. So getting back to the point, I encourage a lot of people to go to therapy or do a form of therapy, but I'm not doing it myself. And I think that's very narrow-minded and hypocrite because I'm like, yeah, people should do that, but not me. So thank you so much for. I'm really happy I asked you the question because now you gave me something after this podcast to think about. Reading more and any form of therapy, which shouldn't, like I just mentioned, isn't always like talking about issues, but just going to someone, talking, getting any form of therapy and training your mind. It's like going to the gym for your mind. And I think that's really important. And which way it is doesn't matter, whether it's with music, sports, or reading, whatever. So yeah, that's really interesting. And circling back to the whole ego thing, um, yeah, that's also something to be, like you said, be aware of, and then choosing what to do with it. And there's a difference between ego and enjoyment, and there's a difference between ego and pride, which they're close to each other, and they can lead to the dark side, but that doesn't necessarily make them evil. For instance, I got a lot of enjoyment and pride when I got to teach. I got a lot of enjoyment and pride when my students win competitions, and I get a lot of enjoyment and pride when I see a classroom filled with students. I get enjoyment and pride when people travel an hour and a half to train with me. I got a lot of enjoyment and pride when I got my instructional on BJJ Fanatics, or when I see my YouTube channel grow. Um, but I do really try to stay very humble with it and open-minded. Let it, okay, this has happened. I also call it luck sometimes. I think I had a lot of luck in my life, and I think a lot of people out there who deserve the small things I got way more than that I deserve them. So that sometimes feels shitty. But I do think this enjoyment can be there. Sometimes I'm watching something from the team. I'm watching my students compete, and I do exactly what I did with them in privates, or I watch my instructional, or I read some reviews, and that fills me with a lot of joy. And I think that should be okay, but you have to be aware where's the boundary between joy, because joy brings you further. It's a boost in confidence, and it gets you to do even better. Enjoyment, pride, and keeping it that it doesn't become the bad part of ego, like, wow, look, we're the best or whatever. But that doesn't mean you cannot be proud on those things. Now I'm talking about things for me as a coach, but also proud, for example, as a student on your own jiu-jitsu. You can have pride in that. You can feel very good about successing. And if you feel like, okay, I swept someone 10 times, or I did this cool sweep or entry, then it's not the ego like I did it on you, like I'm better than you. It's just the ego, I feel good about myself that I got this technique down, which I tried to do a lot of times, which I practiced, and now I finally succeed. So that's the difference between bad ego is like, I submitted you 10 times, I'm better than you. And good ego was, wow, I finally hit that submission I've been trying so
Which I
long.
think I think enjoyment in this case could be used as a currency, for example. Other than just like making money and having this as your kind of state for enjoyment. No, you are actually enjoying the action of doing something. And I think this is the cleanest form of evaluation or self-evaluation, right? And this is why I think jiu-jitsu is something that could really change everybody's life. And this is why I'm almost like I'm saying I'm preaching it, because I think it is
Hmm.
an instrument for so many things, and it's such a self-evaluation tool where you can evaluate, challenge, and prove yourself without having negative consequences for other people. And yeah, I think you are on a very cool mission there, to build a community, to help other people. Just simply the fact that you're putting yourself on the line by traveling to multiple different cities and teaching and making your community bigger speaks for you. So I want to give you the chance now to talk a little bit about um, Energia martial arts and what else you've been doing besides just teaching, which is already a lot.
Yeah, so thank you for that opportunity, first of all. And just to elaborate on what you just said about, like teaching and stuff, I think if you get into this, sorry, enjoyment, the currency of enjoyment, that was a nice one you said. I think that's very important. To be honest, I don't know about other gyms or teachers or instructors, so I am not a authority on that. Let's make that clear. But my experience is you should enjoy the hell out of this, because that's the highest goal, helping people and getting that enjoyment. Because to be honest, it's pretty hard to make a living with this. That's just a trying to make a fair statement. That's not complaining. And there's also I notice people in jiu-jitsu who do way better than I do. But let's be honest, that's a select few. That's maybe 1% of jiu-jitsu instructors. I know for a fact that most instructors have a either a normal job on the side, well, normal job, let's whatever, a job on the side, or if they're full-time instructors, they aren't living a very luxurious life. Well, not that's not necessarily true. I think I live a very luxurious life in freedom, in making my hobby and passion my work, getting to share it with people, and traveling and meeting people. I think those three things are so extremely valuable. The and the downside that there's not that much uh, money or currency involved. Yeah, that's a thing. You should take that for granted, and it is what it is. But that doesn't mean you cannot work for that and also improve that aspect of your jiu-jitsu work or any type of profession. I make the same mistake over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day. I devalue things. I do a lot of money. I uh, I make a lot of mistakes on saying that my enjoyment is the main thing, and therefore I let people do everything for free or being like, no, let's do private for half the price, and up, because I enjoy it so much. But that doesn't grow my business, which in the end also helps those people grow. So it's a stupid loophole. I should improve this, and I should improve rates and should improve these things because then I can even give more back to the community and expand my business for those people. But that's something I'm struggling with. That's my Groundhog Day on a daily basis. I even get my own students being mad at me for not charging enough for monthly fees and stuff. And that's a nice wake up trigger. And still, I'm not doing it, but I should in the future, to help them even more. And yeah, on what is energy and martial arts. First off, I still have no clue. I'm just doing, um, and I want to be very honest about that. I did not choose or wake up one day to make this my living. I always thought I would be a teacher 2 or 3 days a week and do this on the side as a hobby. So I've already surpassed that, and I'm actually living the dream, and I'm living on bonus time, as to say. Because if you would say my life would be to teach at a school 2 days a week and do jiu-jitsu on the side, that was my dream. Now I'm just doing jiu-jitsu and capoeira. So in that aspect, I'm very grateful and happy. And I didn't choose to do a YouTube channel or instructionals or merchandise. We have a big, or big, in my opinion, big gear business with Energy of Fightwear. We have over 20 no-gi designs, different gis, belts, and I've been shipping stuff all over the world, and a lot, mostly obviously here in the Netherlands and close by Germany, etc. But I've shipped to Brazil, Mexico, Korea, Moscow, Russia, the States, Spain, Italy, everywhere. I'm really, really excited about that. But the thing is, I never had a plan, man. I just do. I just thought I'd only have a red belt with a logo on it, like a lot of gyms have, and I made one. I thought, yeah, maybe a few of my students would like it as well. And then I had 100 orders, and then things just got out of hand, you know. I never wanted to do a YouTube channel because I think, like I said, I had this huge, just getting the power to the laptop because the battery's running low. Because I had this huge imposter syndrome. I was like, who am I to do a YouTube channel? There's so many good instructors out there. But I had a student who was into camera production, and he said, well, at least we can have amazing quality, because a lot of the videos we saw were very shitty on video quality and audio. So I said, yeah, sure, let's just do it, and let's focus mainly on our own students. I want to do the videos for my students. Like, okay, we do this technique this week or this month, and you can rewatch it on YouTube the way I teach and the way we do it. And that also got out of hand. Now I have 80% of my viewers are from the States. I have people from 20 different countries watching, and it's more Americans watching than my own students from the Netherlands. So everything just got out of hand. And I never asked or even dreamt of being on an instruction like BJJ Fanatics, but I got a message one day asking me if I wanted to do an instructional. And at first I thought it was either a hoax or that they were wrongly connected and looking for my coach or someone else with the same name. But then they said, no, we saw your YouTube channel, Energy of Martial Arts. And mind you, by then I only had like a few hundred subscribers, or just the first 200. It was really small, I think. And we just had a few videos, but they liked the way I taught and they liked the way I explained. And they asked me to do an instructional. And then I went to this crazy roller coaster of, yeah, let's just do it. So these things are really cool. All these things that, besides teaching, expand my brand and the things I love doing. But to be honest, I think it's a lot of luck, timing, being in the right place at the right moment, and just doing. And you know, I always, we have this this saying like, we kijken wel hoe loopt. Voor iedereen die meeluistert, lekker lachen. Or where the ship ends. You know, like I just follow the wind and see what happens. So that's I think it sucks for some people to hear that, because I would love to give like this plan I had, but I'm just being very honest. I didn't have a plan, man. I just love teaching. I just do what I love, and good things come my way. And I truly believe that's the power of how do you say, aantrekkingskracht? I
There's
know,
it's
the
called
power.
law of attraction. I've thought
Thank you
about
so
it
much.
earlier when you said it, and I don't think it's true that you're not having a plan. That you might not have planned for all of these different aspects to pop up, but your idea was to teach jiu-jitsu, and it just got out of hand because you put so much into it, I think.
I think the difference is between having a plan and a vision. I do have a very strong vision. I have a strong motivation. I have a strong passion. This is what I do. This is my dream. This is what I was made to do. Not jiu-jitsu, Osaka jiu-jitsu. Let's make that clear. But teaching. That's what I do. I chose jiu-jitsu as an instrument, or I choose capoeira as an instrument, as a tool to teach. But yes, I like teaching. I like helping people. I like enjoying. I like helping groups grow and getting better teams, community, building community. And I have a clear vision on that. And then all these extra things, yes, that come my way. Yeah, I think you're right. It's not like I don't have a plan. Obviously, I have a lot of plans. The things we do, I have so many things going on, from seminars to new designs, traveling and building new classes, getting new places, building the team, getting it to a higher level. A lot of goals for that, but yeah, things just happen in a weird way. I never asked the gym to teach jiu-jitsu there. I just got called and said, "Hey, we heard your name, and you're the guy we're looking for to teach jiu-jitsu." I'm like, yeah, cool, let's do it, and let's just see what happens. And even if I started teaching with 2 students, I've had that experience teaching months in an empty gym. And I can tell you that's a very hard thing to do. Any instructor out there, I know that struggle. I've been teaching in an empty gym for 6 months, and no one showed up, and that hurts a lot. Not financially, I don't care about that, but being there with all your passion and no one showing up, But the only stupid thing I did, it's a cliche, but consistency is everything in your personal jiu-jitsu, but also as a business owner. Consistency, consistency. I lost so much money on the Energy of Fightwear brand in the beginning, investing in the gear, in the geese, and all the photo shoots and filming and all this stuff. Just was such a business-wise very stupid move, but I never quit. That's the whole thing. That's the stupid thing I have. I just don't quit. I'm too stupid to quit. Just like in jiu-jitsu, and that consistency just slowly improves. And now I'm reaping the benefits, and I'm, how do you say, collecting the fruits of my labor by just being stupidly ignorant and continuing and having this vision and just doing. And then, yeah, things just expand in the good way. Sometimes I'm looking around at my students or at the things we do, or when we go to competition, or when I look at the gear on my website or the YouTube, I'm like, wow, I'm still so small, but compared to where I started out and with the goals I had, which were none, I'm like, holy shit, that's cool. Yeah, let's keep it going. And it's just sharing passion and just going for it, and things just go. Yeah, things just expand. And I'm also prepared and ready for a dip when things go down. That also happens. There's also sometimes I also get a negative experience, or things don't go as I plan, or classes don't go as good as I had hoped, or an event doesn't have the show up I want. But I still just do it, even if I know it wouldn't. For instance, I did my first sponsorship and gear stands on a tournament last weekend, and I knew I would that would just cost me a lot of money and time and energy. But I thought, yeah, fuck it, let's do it, and it's good for the sport, trying to help the sport, and it actually turned out to be better than I thought. And it's just a step in the right direction. Even if it never works out, I still have this experience. Just like yourself, I saw you went to Thailand, New York. I also traveled my whole life. I've lived in Brazil, been there twice, been to Thailand, Laos, Kenya, Africa, Finland, all over the world. And I always just went and thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll have an experience. And I always just say yes to a lot of things, just do them, just try them out. Okay, I'll do that class, I'll do a kids class, I'll do whatever. Try this new design. And sometimes they like flop. It doesn't get the results I had hoped, and I'm like, yeah, I'm really happy I did it, because now I have experience, and now I have feedback, and now I have yeah, this life experience. So I think the best thing that helped me expand all this time was just passion, just going for it, not quitting, and not being afraid to fail. I think that's a big one, holding people down in their personal jiu-jitsu, in their personal life, completely out of jiu-jitsu, but also in their uh, business life, whether that's being an entrepreneur, or being a business owner, or being a employee. Being afraid to fail, being afraid to switch, being afraid to change, and you should just feel. Yeah, I always feel like this safety net. Maybe because I have a degree in teaching, I can always find a job or whatever. Maybe because I can rely on my wife, my friends, my family. But I dare to take a lot of risks, not because I'm unaware of the risks. I know the risks I'm taking, and I know they're sometimes serious risks. But I'm just A, too stupid, and B, I'm just like, yeah, let's just try it, man. We'll see what happens, and if it doesn't go my way, then who
I don't
cares, man?
enjoy that you're calling
I
yourself
don't, I
stupid,
don't
because
like.
I think it's actually very brave. Of course, you need to be a little bit stubborn, but this is what consistency is, right?
Stubborn,
Like
yeah.
your consistency is driving you throughout these dips, and only this way you're gonna be able to be successful. And this is, I think, the main difference between a vision and a plan, because the vision is much further away, and the picture how to get there is not necessarily clean. When you go for plans, though, they need to go as planned. And if something doesn't work out, you have maybe plan B, C, and D, but then you might run out of different options. Whereas when you give yourself small goals and you pursue that long term vision, you're much less likely to fail, because you haven't planned for most of that stuff. And you're making short plans how to get those goals to work, and then you're on to the next goal. And you're continuously pursuing your vision. And you're right, you have to take risks. And what is it's a funny human law as well, like that loss aversion concept. Are you aware of that? Loss
No,
aversion means that we as humans are so afraid of losing our status quo that we are not taking the risks that are necessary to actually upgrade ourselves. So we're just so happy to lose what we have that we're not even trying to get more.
So afraid to lose what we
Exactly.
have here.
And I think you need some
Yeah.
kind of safety nets, some support networks, and sometimes just, yeah, the guts to just go and do something.
Mhm.
And I think you did that, and it looks amazing. By the way, your no gi designs, your rash guards designs. By the way, rash guards are these things that we wear when we're not training jiu-jitsu in the gi. They are amazing. I've never seen a site that has so many appealing and different rash guard designs, and I'm definitely gonna order at least one and a few of those t-shirts so I can wear them on my podcast because I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. Yes, that's one of those.
Thank you. I do have to honestly do a huge shout out to my team there, specifically to Gideon for the designs and everyone helping. It's I really want to make clear that everything is a team effort. Even my teaching, but also my instructionals on BJ Fanatics, which I'm really grateful for, and was one of the coolest opportunities I ever got. I even have two, and planning on doing a third one soon. But that's also because of the amazing help of my team, helping me film, helping edit, giving feedback, being drilling partners, my coaches. So anything that's going okay in what we do or that I'm really enjoying, it's all team effort. And I think that's also one thing that's very important about energy martial arts, and just as a tip for people in general. You know the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. For me, that's a daily thing. I truly think that team effort is the most important thing to get anywhere. And sometimes I feel very lonely as a business owner and teacher in what I do, because I have to make the decisions and I have no example. I never have anyone telling me what to do. I have no one helping me out. But then again, I always remind myself that I have my team as a huge backup. And I think that also gives me the confidence that I take all these risks, because I know all these people that uh, support me. It's not me and people supporting me. It's people supporting each other. Me supporting them. They supporting each other. They supporting me. So the team effort. There's not a hierarchy. It's not the team and I'm above that. It's we're all on the same level, and that feels so confident and so good to have my coaches above and my team besides me, and also switching roles. But you know what I'm trying to get to. Um, like that team effort is so important in, I don't want to say my success because I don't think I have a lot of success. You know, I'm very little, but for my personal success, I think the team effort is the driving factor in
I
getting
think
there.
it's amazing that you mentioned this because it does, like you as a teacher, you're an individual, right? It is an individual journey, but still you choose to make sure that the team gets acknowledged, which I think is speaks for a certain fact that we as humans, we are just bound to create communities, right? Like when we have somebody with a vision and we see they're doing it wholeheartedly, then there will always be people who are supporting you in that because you're being authentic, you're being yourself, you're doing what you love, and people will always be attracted to that. And this is also where here the law of attraction comes back in. You're just motivating people. They're just helping you, not for their own benefit. Of course, everybody gets their own benefit by helping others, but they are supporting you in your cause because they see that you're doing something great. And I think it's been an amazing conversation. I just wanted you to again underline where exactly people can reach out to you on Instagram, YouTube, and how they can find your instructional BJJ fanatics. And yeah, that's definitely gonna end in my shopping cart as well, by the way.
Cool. We'll talk about it after the show. I'll help you out. Yes. So thank you for that. I think yeah, truly the team thing. That's the most beautiful feedback I get and the best currency out there in the whole world. But it's also the thing that scares me the most. And I maybe other instructors or people have that as well. You also have a leading role in your business, and it's beautiful to see people like enjoy that. But that's also, it sometimes just scares the living hell out of me because I feel all this responsibility while I have no idea what I'm doing. But that, I think, if it doesn't scare you, then it's not, then you don't value it enough, and it should scare you. Some things should really scare you because then you're on the right path. Yes, so once again, thank you for that opportunity. The easiest way is just to enter my name, Tum, Energia, so there's the energy with, in Portuguese. Then you will find anything on Google. But specifically on Instagram, I try to respond to every DM. People send me videos on jiu-jitsu, they ask questions, anything. I always try to respond. Um, Sometimes just don't get to that because of all the messages, but I really like being there for everyone out there. Best way to reach me is on Instagram, and that's just Energia. If you want to watch some videos or free stuff, check out our YouTube channel, which is Energia Martial Arts. That is also the name of the website, Energia Martial Arts, where you can find everything. It's in Dutch, unfortunately. I'm trying to get the English version as well in the future, but you can find a link tree there with everything. You can also find us on Patreon for some more hidden content, bonus content. Just check it out. That's also Energia Martial Arts. And then my instructions on BJJ Fanatics, just enter my name, Tum Energia, or the topics of my first two DVDs, which is Leg Locks Unlocked. That's the easiest way to find them.
Awesome. Great. I'm looking forward to seeing all of your content and definitely having you back on the podcast later on down the line, because I'm gonna mark those rabbit holes that you avoided to climb into, but I think there is some content for some longer conversations that we can have later down the line.
Nice, nice, nice. Thank you. I really enjoyed this as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, I really want to thank you as well, not just for the opportunity to do the podcast, but also for giving me some insights. So that's really cool. Thank you for that. And I really wish you all the best with the podcast. I checked out the other episodes, and we didn't speak about it today. Maybe after we finish the podcast now, but I think it's also a hell of a journey for you to take this decision and start a podcast, because people like to listen to podcasts, but no one ever thinks about what it's like to do a podcast and what goes behind the scenes and behind the screen and gets you to take that step, and how that process has been for you. So maybe I should do a podcast with you and ask you about that whole experience in a different time. But yeah, that's very interesting for me. So thank you for also yeah, allowing me to watch
Yeah,
that
thanks for
process.
being curious as well, and I'm definitely gonna take you up on that opportunity, and I'm definitely gonna seek you out for some coaching sessions. Where can people go and train with you? Can you rename the cities?
Yeah, yeah, that's hard. It's in the Netherlands, to the east, Nijmegen. That's a pretty easy one. That's the oldest city in the Netherlands, Nijmegen. And then we're in Wil. No one knows Wil. Even Dutch people don't know. It doesn't matter. But shout out to Wil. It's close to Doetinchem. And in Zutphen, which is a city to the north. But the easiest thing is just to check out my website. There you have the cities, and you also have Google Maps, so you can see where they are compared to each other, compared to bigger cities, compared to Germany, compared to Amsterdam, etc. And if you're ever in the Netherlands and you don't want to travel to the east, I also know a lot of good jiu-jitsu schools around the country. Just send me a message. I'm happy to support all other instructors out there. Yeah, and if you're in the east, feel free to swing by. Anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Awesome, thanks. I have one more closing question. I know this closure is getting a bit longer, but what would you recommend to somebody who now got curious in jiu-jitsu? How to take their first steps?
Ooh, good question. Easy answer though. Just do it. You know, just go to any Nike store, see what they put up. They put the sign, just do it, and just do it. You know, don't overthink it. I have a lot of people. I have sometimes have students mailing me for trial classes. Yeah, what should I bring? When should I start? When am I fit enough? You know, there's never going to be a perfect time in jiu-jitsu than yesterday. Remember that the best time to start jiu-jitsu is yesterday. Just get to class, just experiment, and be open-minded. And don't see it as going to a martial arts where you're competing to win. Don't compare it to karate, kickboxing, or whatever. Just go to a new activity and see what the people are like, what the class is like, and just dive headfirst into that big pool. Don't prepare. Don't watch. You know, the people that prepare most, the people that watch a lot of UFC, the people that watch a lot of jiu-jitsu instructionals before they take the first class, are actually harder to teach for me as a teacher than people who are just open-minded and just walk into the gym. You know, be that second person. Just be open-minded. Don't be like, yeah, but I saw in UFC that they do it like this, blah blah. No, just go there. Be an open book and just experiment. Experience it. Just experience it. Just go yesterday. So go to the website, find a place near you, find a school near you. Tell them the podcast brought you here, but just go for the class. Try jiu-jitsu. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for the great advice, and I wish you a great day. Happy to have you on sometime soon, and I wish you great success in your teachings and with your business, and
Likewise, brother.
happy to speak to you soon again.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Peace.